So before we begin, just a quick show of hands. How many people here are actually developers? Okay, wow. A developer conference with nearly all developers here. Another question, how many people are actually involved in startups or new businesses that are less than 3 years old? Startups or new businesses less than 3 years old? Okay, a few. Yeah, go for it.
All right, folks. Hopefully everybody's had a great lunch and is ready for some more information. And to have your ears destroyed. We've been asked to remind you about the open project space. So that's back up towards where you came in. So feel free to drop into that later on. First of all, this afternoon we have Micheal Colhoun from Colhoun Tech. He's going to be taking us on a journey to becoming a co-founder.
Thank you. Great stuff. So, welcome everybody. Hope you had a nice lunch. So I'm going to tell. Normally, when I give talks, they're usually 7 days long, 14 days long. So, doing a 30-minute talk is a bit of a challenge because I need to condense things a little bit. So, what I want to do today is I want to give you something useful you can take away with you. So really what I want to do is I want to make it a little bit lighthearted, not too heavy, and I want to just share with you some insights that I've got over the last year about what I do. So before we begin, my name is Micheal Colhoun, and I run two businesses. One is a business that is around technology, so I'm a software developer. I've been a software engineer for about 20 years now, and I've worked with lots of places around the world, from London Stock Exchange, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, Deutsche Bank, lots of insurance companies, and lots of startups as well over the last 20 years. So I'm very familiar with providing services to companies who need IT skills. But I have a few other passions as well. And one of those passions is personal growth and personal development, which is really interesting from a developer perspective. I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm guessing a lot of developers come across the word HR and soft skills and say, I don't want anything to do with that soft cuddly stuff, right? However, that's one of the things I came across about 15 years ago, and it's been one of my second passions as well. So about a year ago, we set up a business called Transforming People Academy. And so we do personal development trainings, allow people to get clear on their outcomes, to get a better mindset and get better results, which I think is really, really important in startups and if you're actually moving through an organization, whether it's through promotion. So a little bit about myself, see if these slides work. So that's me actually training at our recent NLP training there. We do trainings on how to conquer your fear of public speaking. So that's me at the Europa last year. We do goal setting events at the start of the year. That's me at one of our events that we run ourselves. That's a recent meetup in Europa as well. This is about how to get results with NLP. This is me about to start one of my podcasts. So you can check out our podcast and see a little bit about that there. This is me in a state of glee after the first copy of my book came from the printers. So we published a new book there a couple of weeks ago called The Pillars of Transformation. It's how to navigate change. And that's some of our graduates from our recent master practitioner. And that's one of the hypnosis trainings we're doing. So I spend a lot of time on stage. I spend a lot of time talking to people about change and bring people through change, whether it's coaching, or leadership, or management, and guiding them through the process of change. However, today I'm not talking about change. Because my background is development, I want to share with you some key insights that I got today over the last year about coming from the perspective of a developer who's moving into being a startup founder. Because I think if you do the same thing, if you become a startup founder, if you can get involved in a startup, you're probably going to find these key things, key distinctions that will probably make a difference to you. Does that sound useful? Yeah? Okay. So a little bit of background about before this. I've had lots of different careers, lots of different jobs in IT. Some of them have been fantastic and some have been not so good. So let me give you a little bit of background. This is my first web page I ever did, right? 2002. Didn't have a beard back then. Okay, I'm very proud of that. I actually got that from the archive.org from way back. So that was my first adventure into technology. We're writing Apache using Mosaic and PHP CGI scripts written in C back then, scary stuff. But I have some really sort of scary projects as well. One of the projects I worked on is I used to work in astronomy for an astronomical instrumentation. And this is one of the places I worked for about 3 months. This is in Russia. It's the BTA 6-meter telescope. I don't know if you can see it there, but that's the kind of the top reflector, and the main dish is in here, and that's a car. Okay, so it's kind of a big sort of a telescope. And sometimes when you're working in instrumentation, I was working in instrumentation engineering, things don't always go well, right? Sometimes you get hiccups, you get bugs, right? But when you're working with embedded systems and switches and electronics, those bugs can be a little bit more serious in some places. So I'm just going to show you what's inside that dome. In this dome here, I don't know if you can see it, but that's the main telescope again. That's the 6 meter reflector. It's the largest single mirror telescope in the world, based in the Caucasus in Russia. Wonderful place. And there's a guy there, right? You see that? There's a man there. Can you see that? So it's kind of a big thing. It's a big yoke, right? And what happens is they turn that telescope around so it's facing outside, look at the stars, and we look at things like the Crab Nebula and very distant stars. However, sometimes you get a glitch. There's actually a shutter inside that thing there, right? And that shutter is opened by a solenoid, by a switch. And sometimes the switches stick, right? Now, in wintertime, the BTA telescope is at the top of a mountain. It gets kind of cold, right? So it's about -20, okay? There was one particular, worst job I had to do was at one point, the shutter got stuck. It says, what are we going to do? We don't know how to fix it. We need to record now. So one of the guys volunteered me to actually, go into the stairs, and here's a door there. The stairs inside this wall out to what's called the crow's nest. Then we have to swing the telescope around to the crow's nest, and you have to climb inside this, right? And close the door after you, and then manually open the shutter while they sit there and record data for 3 hours, then close the shutter, right? It's probably the worst job I had to do. -20 degrees. I'm just glad I had Doc Martens. It took about 3 hours for the cold to get from the metal into the base of my feet. So that wasn't a great experience. But that's that's one of the bugs that you probably won't have to deal with, right? Solenoids don't work, switches don't work, you have to deal with that. One of the better ones was we had a party once in New York in the Windows of the World. Anybody heard of the Windows of the World? It used to be in the top of the Twin Towers. So basically what you're talking about is up here. So we had a party out there during the dot-com period. There was a big massive party. It was free booze, party and all the rest of it. We spent a whole week basically having a wonderful time during the dot-com period before the whole thing came crashing down. So that was probably one of my favorite memories of the dot-com period. So I've done a lot of things right over the years, but I've also done a lot of things wrong. So one of the things I've noticed about getting good results or actually doing well in IT is that I surrounded myself by really successful people. I don't know if you noticed that, but successful people tend to be surrounded by other successful people. So I guess that was accidental, but I noticed who was really good at what they did, and I wanted to become like them. I wanted to hang out with people like that from a very early stage. Also, I'm very determined and pig-headed. When somebody says to me, that can't be done, it's almost like red rag to a bull. It says, okay, let's find out. And I actually want to go out and do things because people say it can't be done. So I get very determined, pig-headed about things. I also never believe people who tell me that I can't do something, right? So people have said to me before, if you leave IT and go off and do something else, you'll always be out of IT. You'll never be able to get back into it. That's not my experience. In fact, over the last 18 years, I've left the IT industry as a software contractor probably every year and a half to do something totally different, and then gone straight back into contracting again. And it's given me fantastic opportunities for growth, opportunities for learning, and opportunities for trying different things. So that's resulted in getting experience in many different areas of business, including one of my favorite areas at the moment is ASP.NET Core. This is a new open source platform from Microsoft that I love working in. I haven't done much in the last year in it because I'm working on something else. I'll tell you about that in a second. I've worked in Angular, JS, lots of enterprise software over the years, lots of build, deployment, continuous deployment stuff, and lots of cloud-based stuff using Azure Software as a Service. I'm also a bit of an expert in the personal development area. I'm trained in NLP and yoga, meditation, facilitation, personal development, lots of areas like that. And I think in this day and age, something that's really important to get as a developer is the importance of these soft skills, because at the end of the day, it's your ability to get your mindset focused that allows you to get results. It's not your development skills alone. It's how you think about how you solve problems, okay? And I've also worked in business development, lots of startups and lots of large corporations I've talked about before. But it hasn't all been good. I've done lots of things wrong. Taking these little breaks from software contracting has allowed me to actually dabble in other areas and try things out over the years. So over the last 15 years or so, I've set up a marketing business. In fact, my first business was called Worldwide Web Marketing because we thought we thought this web thing might take off, right? So how do you market people to get on the web? We don't need to do that anymore. People know that. Now you need how to get results on the web. We had a web hosting business. We ran that for a couple of years. That was fun, right? Professional services, working out requirements for pieces of software, functional specifications, delivering software. I ran a trading business for a couple of years. We traded foreign exchange for a couple of years. That was great fun. Software consultancy business. We had a web-based tourism business in the west of Ireland, which is still there. It's called Galway.net. So check it out if you want to look at how terrible a 20-year-old website looks when it hasn't been looked after for 20 years. I've set up several different fitness and yoga businesses, including YMS Fitness and Bold Fitness. This is more like a sideline business than anything else. And ran non-profit organizations. I ran a print business, a computer build and repair business. Don't do it, guys. Don't fix other people's computers. So none failed, but most of them didn't get anywhere. Why I'm telling you this is that it's trying these different other experiments that got you to realize what you can do, what you love, and what you actually want to do for the rest of your life. So being a software developer gives you a fantastic opportunity to dip out, try something else, give it a go for 12, 18 months. And if it goes, if you've got legs, you can run with it. If not, you say, well, I can always go back contracting. And I think that's one of the sort of secrets I want to share with you today. As a developer, you've got incredible, incredible opportunities that most other sectors don't have. Brilliant. So I also ran a yoga business for 3 years. So after I finished up on the London Stock Exchange, I had a big pile of money in my bank account, my current account. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to tour for 3 years. For 3 years, I traveled around Europe teaching yoga and meditation, doing workshops. I taught in Sweden and England and Ireland and France and Germany and all over the place. And it was a lot of fun, but I didn't make any money doing it, right? So just because something is you're passionate about it, it doesn't mean it actually becomes a business. So I've seen both sides of the equation. I've seen very successful business, been involved in very successful business, and I've also been involved in lots of businesses that haven't been quite so successful. So what I want to talk about today is the unexpected journey from developer to startup founder. And I hope you get some. So what I want to do is just take a few simple ideas. Now you've heard all these before probably, but I want to give you the context around why these are important, because it maybe will give you new insights, new understandings of how you see development differently after this talk. So if I've achieved my mission today, it's to get you to think differently about the really, really valuable mindset and skills you have as developers, okay? So I hope you can get value from it. So another way of thinking it is, how can a developer get away with not writing a single line of code? So that's the undertext of what's going on here. So how does it start off? Well, what happened was, I finished my last contract with CME 2016, Christmas time. And I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new business. And this business, what I want to do is I want to develop the Facebook for personal development. I want to have this online portal that allows people to really understand their mindset and work through a sort of an online instrument to work out how their mind works and how they can change their mind to become really successful. And in the process of doing that, I wanted to build a system where you could log in and there was these streams and articles, a little bit like Facebook but for personal development. So I sat down and I built the first version of that over about 2-3 months, from about September to Christmas in my spare time. And it was starting to look well. So we launched the first part, got some people to sign up, but there's no content yet. And in the process of doing that, I knew that we were going to be delivering trainings, and the trainings I knew we'd be delivering was NLP certification trainings, because I was certified as a trainer about 12 years ago, and I've been teaching trainings ad hoc over the years. So we were going to set up a business 9 months later, that's September, so 9 months to get the business set up, and then we'll actually launch. And so what we'll do is, I'd already trained a couple of people the year before, is we'll start running some meetups to meet people. I don't know if anybody here involved in meetups? Okay, so you've heard of meetups. Most people have heard of meetups. Meetups is a really great place to meet people of the area you want to specialize in. So in January 2017, we ran a first meetup. One of our students begged us to run the meetup so they could practice the techniques of how to get rid of phobias and how to get rid of fear and how to change your mindset and how to improve stage presence. And the first meetup we ran in the Europa Hotel, we're expecting maybe 5 or 6 people to turn up to it because we didn't advertise. First meetup, 30 people turned up. Says, okay, right, didn't expect that. So, and we said, brilliant. And we had all these exercises we were going to do, but with 30 people, it's a little bit harder to manage. So we did some of that and it was really good. We got fantastic feedback. And we said, okay, there's another one next month. Who's going to the next one? Everybody put their hand up. Wow. So that was great. And then the second meetup, we ran it in February. And 40 people turned up. I says, okay, there's something going on here. I said to Micheal and my wife, I don't think we can wait till September to launch the business. I think we need to do it now. And the back of my mind is, well, what about the platform? It's only 3 months in, I've got 6 months work to do. I says, okay, you need to grab the opportunities when they come up, right? So what I did is, we launched the business between the second and the third meetup. And our third meetup was in March. And our third meetup, our first day of business, we sold £12,000 worth of trainings. And went, wow, we're going to be rich. Now, I didn't find out we didn't sell any more trainings the rest of the month, but the point, it was a fantastic opportunity. So our first day of business, we've got 12 grand in the bank. Basically, we've got a year's salary minimum wage covered in the first day of business. Now, what I didn't tell you about is I'd spent the previous 20th months working every hour I had as a contractor. I took no holidays for 20 months, took no breaks for 20 months, and I spent no money for 20 months. So I also had some money to pay myself for the next year. So our first day of business, we had 2 salaries paid for a year. Wow. Now we've got an opportunity to do something with 0 funding, 0 overdraft, 0 loans. We've got a business day one. Fantastic. So then what we had to do was we actually had to set up the business. Because we launched the business. I think what I did is I created the business, we got a credit card machine, and we had a talk, and that was it. Okay? So between the first day of business, then we had to set up all the systems, we had to set up a mailing list, we had to set up an accountancy system, we set up all the things you need to put in place. So needless to say, this wasn't planned. I was expecting to do this in a nice, gentle pace over the next 9 months. That's not the way it happened. So now we had to do everything, right, straight away, jump straight in. And we did as much as we could to get things working based on priorities, which is fantastic. But the problem was, 3 months in, we were talking to clients, people are ringing us, we're organising events, we're putting on our trainings, we're doing marketing material, we're setting up social media pages, all the stuff you have got to do, what I call the yak shaving, or what Scott Hanselman would call the yak shaving. The things you need to do before you actually get the stuff you want to do, which is deliver trainings. After 3 months, I looked at my Visual Studio desktop and said, I haven't written a single line of code in 3 months. What do I do? How am I going to get this platform out there? Right. So what do? I rang up one of my friends and says, look, I'm really busy. Could you give me a hand? Could you take some of the stuff off my plate and just do it for me and I'll pay you? He said, great. So we jumped on a Skype call. He's too busy to sit down and write requirements. So we got on a Skype call. He recorded it. And I told him what I needed, big long list of things I needed. And he says, great, I'll do it. And off he goes for a month. Comes back a month later, and he'd built this website exactly the way I wanted. He'd added in this event management system. He'd put the stream back-end stuff in there. He'd create this area for actually putting in new articles, new articles, linking to other articles. He built a Xamarin app, sort of cross-platform app, and he built an admin app as well, so we could use the app for checking into events, and then we could actually, people could download the app, have a barcode on it. It's great, fantastic. And I said, as a developer, I was so impressed. How many developers here? How many developers here? As a developer, I was so impressed what he had done. As a business owner, I looked at what he had done and said, this is crap, right? This is going to take me 6 months. This is going to be 12. This could take me 2 years before we get all the things I need to do. I don't know if anybody's experienced that, right? Where, you know, you have an expectation of doing something and then you realize how much time it's actually going to take, right? And how much effort it's going to take and how much money it's going to take to build that platform in a way that's actually going to work the way you actually want it. So 1 month in, I had to make a decision. Was I going to run a person development business, or was I going to build a platform, right? And I realized that, luckily, I didn't buy into the myth of sunken costs. So I've already spent a couple of £1,000 doing 1 month's work. I don't want to spend £20,000, £30,000 on something that may or may not work, but I know people want the trainings. So we dropped the platform, right? Really, really challenging decision to make because I've been doing software my whole life. The reason we dropped the platform is because I was working 100 hours a week, not 40 hours a week. So I gave up a 40-hour-a-week job working for somebody else to work 100 hours a week for myself. The difference was I loved it, right? I never had to stop because it was just fun the whole time. So what happened was we focused on developing the training courses and the advertising material. In fact, the website was sitting there pretty much stagnant for about 6 months. And I realized that in order for that to work, while I could build a website, the problem was when I looked at other people who had built websites out there, I would say to myself, that's rubbish. I could do a better job than that. Anybody ever say that? I could do better than that's flow there, that's problem there. And the bit I was missing was I'd forgotten this concept of time. I'd forgotten how long it takes to build software, to actually get software to production, even though I've been doing it for 20 years. Because, see, here's my experience. My experience was that I was delivering software for people who were mostly enterprises. And the problem was I didn't have an enterprise business. I had a startup business that was selling directly to consumers, right? And even if we spent £60,000 building this website over the next 6 months, we're probably going to get very little money from it, unless we got some sort of seed investment. So we had to make a decision to not focus on that, instead focus on delivering trainings and all the rest of it. So the first lesson, I've skipped over some slides. So I'll just skip over these, I'll come back to these later on. So the business we set up was called Transform People Academy. So the first lesson is software is expensive, really expensive. And sometimes you forget that when it's your job. Because you sit down, you write code. And you write code because you know you can deliver something. And you say, that's rubbish, that's rubbish, that's rubbish, that's a great job. You have to remember, from my perspective, if I'm working 100 hours a week, I don't get to do what a lot of you do, which is you get an idea. Anybody have this experience? You get an idea on a Thursday evening, and you sit down, you do a hackathon for 3 days, and you've got a proof of concept on Monday morning, right? And you sit there and, wow, this is great. This really has got legs, right? If you're working 100 hours a week, 7 days a week, you don't have 30 hours spare. You don't have the opportunity to do a sprint. I had 15 minutes between calls and maybe 2 hours between 3 and 5 the odd day. Okay? So it was a really, really big problem for me to realize that software is really expensive unless it solves a problem at scale. And I'd forgotten that principle. Now we know software is expensive because if you want to build something yourself, it's free. But someone has to pay for it. You're going to have to pay your wage for the year at least. You're talking 40, 50, 60,000, maybe 100,000 pounds if they're a freelancer. And it's a different way of thinking about it. So that was my first my lesson. If you're going to build software for yourself, you probably shouldn't. Why? Because somebody else has probably already done it. You can buy it for pennies in the pound. It's called a SaaS model, software as a service. And it's probably much easier to buy software from somebody else and get the support than try to fit it in between your appointments and the things you're doing. Okay? Fair point? Yeah? Who think that's a fair point? Yeah? Okay. So that was the first one. The second lesson I had to learn about, let me get my bleeper to work. The second lesson I had to realize was that GDPR. Who here has heard of GDPR? Okay. How many people here has GDPR been actually a pain in the ass for them? Same people, right? Okay, got it. So we came across GDPR and we had to do a GDPR policy, this privacy stuff. So I had to sit down and start a policy document and work out how many systems that we actually used in the business. The business was a year old at this stage, that actually touched privacy information. That sounds wrong for some reason, but anyways. So how many systems actually held information about our customers, our mailing lists? And when we did the audit, we realized we're actually using 26 different systems. And I went, where do all these come from? So how did that happen? Because I'm a bloody developer, that's why. I like dabbling in things. We'll try this system, we'll try this, we'll use a bit of this, we'll use a bit of this. So before we knew it, so a lot of these are necessary. So if you run a business, you need an accountancy system. You need a CRM system. You probably need some sort of a marketing system. You probably need some sort of system for managing social media. You probably need a system for looking after your assets, even if it's just a spreadsheet. You're probably going to use Office 365 or Google Docs. You're probably going to use Dropbox or OneDrive or SharePoint or something like that for storing all your different systems. So in total, we had 26 different systems in use. And I'm saying, oh my God, this is crazy. I would never design this intentionally. We had Trello boards and we had all these different tools and techniques and things to help us run the business. And I realized at this point that this is not maintainable, because if we grow, and when we're starting to grow, what do? We start creating new accounts in all these systems. We're passing passwords around, using KeyPass or what other system for passing these passwords around. It says, no, we need to change this. And that was a bit of a wake-up call for me. So since then, we've managed to reduce the systems from 26 down to 15. Now, we still have 15 systems that we can't get rid of yet. I said, okay, if we were to design this correctly, what do we need? We need a way of actually being able to move quickly, but still be able to use these software off the shelf. So first lesson, don't build software yourself. Buy it off the shelf. But then what do you want to do to make that software work with everything else? And the key thing is integration. Now I used to do a lot of integration work in the past and realize I need to apply to self the lessons I'd learned in the past, which is how do I actually at least unify the 3 different aspects of these systems. The first aspect was integration, getting these systems to talk to each other somehow, using some sort of a unified login. Anybody here heard of single sign-on? I'm just curious. Most of you have. So we needed some sort of a single sign-on system. Now we're already using Active Directory, so we moved over to using Azure Active Directory, and we use that to register our applications, so we could build our applications in there. But the other thing I found is a lot of these systems didn't link directly with Active Directory. They might link in with OAuth or ID Connect or something else, or Google. And what we realized is that we needed some way of getting these systems to talk to each other so we could actually get the data we need for transformation, for storing, for manipulating, for doing aggregates, for doing reports. And what we realized, most of these systems already had a mechanism for doing integration. And it's called webhooks. Oh my God, webhooks are so cool. Anybody here using webhooks? Yeah, they're brilliant. How many people are using webhooks? Just curious. If you're not using them, go check them out, because if you're ever going to work with a startup business, you're going to need to use webhooks. It's almost the first free integration protocol that allows you to push directly to REST and just use your systems any way you want. Take literally any system and take our payloads, take them from one system, push them to another system, manipulate them, transform them, and you don't have to pay third parties for doing integration. Absolutely fantastic. So we had webhooks, we had a way of integrating, and then we had our authorization and our identification processes. So the second lesson that I guess I learned is that when you start a business, there's no time, right? So as a developer, you need to think about things differently about how you write software. If you've got no time to write software, how do you actually develop stuff? You can't. You have to get stuff off the shelf and integrate them directly. One of the biggest problems we had is that even though I knew how to solve the problem and I knew I could do it better, we never had the time to do it because we were delivering trainings. Okay, does that make sense? So I think the key thing here is, as a developer, if you're not in that situation already, you need to understand how to develop a sense of urgency about what you do. Right? Has anybody ever been in a project and the project manager or whoever is actually the scrum manager say to you, we've probably got 6 weeks to get this project done, and you say, grand, I can chill out and check out this new API, I'm going to rework this code. Suddenly 4 weeks disappear and suddenly you've got the whole thing to do in 2 weeks. Has that ever happened to anyone? The thing is, if you actually go through what happens in a real startup business, you never have the luxury of time. Never, ever. You have 15 minutes, right? Maybe 2 hours if you're lucky, between 9 and 11 at night, to build something and build something custom that actually works with the existing system. So developing a sense of urgency now will really help you to develop solutions that work in business later on. Does that make sense? Right? So developing that sense of urgency is so important if you actually want to get better results in business. I think we're too relaxed. We can get caught up in our checking this API and rewriting this code and all the rest of it. If you have a sense of urgency from day one, it really makes a huge lesson. And the third one, which I've already mentioned, is integration. The whole thing about integration comes to three things for me. It's webhooks, because they're free, and pretty much all systems already have them. It's some sort of a single sign-on. Design it from the beginning so it makes a difference. And once you have your webhooks and single sign-on, then you can write the real thing that makes the business, the glue that makes the business work, which is microservices. But I'm talking about true microservices, as in, not microservices as we've got all these microservices in the organization, but you've got 2 hours. You have your authentication system, your authorization system, you have got your payload. What can you do in 2 hours and push that out that's going to create some glue in your organization to give you better intel about how your organization works? That makes sense? And finally, what that means is, and this is something I think I had to take on board, is that when you actually get involved in a business, any sort of startup business, as a developer, you've got an opportunity that most people don't actually have, which is this. You understand the plumbing of how these systems work. You understand the concept of databases. You understand of normalization. You understand writing good code. You understand process flows. You understand so much of this stuff. So we sat down to actually build our business. Even understanding all that, there still was a huge learning curve, because we had to understand systems that other people had built and get our heads around that. And even though other people had built these systems, it was still a learning curve of getting there. The thing is, even though it felt challenging, I know so many people who've started businesses like me over the years who failed on the first step because the jump was too big for them. But being a developer and getting your mind focused on what you actually need allows you to actually start using the different parts of these systems, whether it's webhooks or SSO or microservices, or using cloud or on-site, whatever you want to use, in a way that allows you to get things done more quickly. Does that make sense? Right? So I think the opportunity here is to start a business and recognize that as a developer, you have more opportunities than anybody else in the industry, because you will get to understand the technical challenges from a technical perspective, whereas most people have to rote learn off how they do certain things. They have to get trained on how to follow the steps. And until you actually see this happening, you really don't appreciate the value that actually being a developer is. In other words, you can get away with not writing a single line of code and still run a successful business. So that's all I have to say today. What I want to say is that's our business, Transform People Academy. You can come join us every month on the second Wednesday of the month. And you want to talk more about how we actually use these technologies to get a business off the ground. I'd be delighted to help you out. Drop us an email. We're not looking for business from you. We actually have a successful business. But you want support in getting your business off the ground and grow quickly, give us a call. Thank you very much. And any questions? I don't have any time for questions? Yeah. One question? Yeah. Any questions?
I have one.
You've won, yes.
Do you find that software or developers make bad startup founders because of their, sort of desire to write the code themselves? Carried away with it?
I think it's a good question. With a sample size of one, I can say no. I think there is a huge risk that you buy into your investment in time. And I think that's what happened to us for the first 3 months. I was luckily, we want to be cash positive from day one. That was one of the criteria I had. That's why I worked 20 months straight before we started. Luckily, we were cash positive day one, and luckily I didn't buy into how much I'd invested in my own software. So we actually moved away from our system, and we actually purchased a marketing system, right? We used a marketing system, WYSIWYG, drag the things onto it in order to be able to get things moving quickly so we could actually reach our audience. And that's worked very well for us. We can build a system over time, but the first year in business, I think it's about moving fast. I think Mark Zuckerberg said about 10 years ago, he said, you've got to move fast and break things. I think if you want to be successful in a startup, you've got to move fast and fix things. Okay. Any questions? Okay, good question. I've asked the same question. The thing is repeatability. Okay? The first year in business, almost nothing we did got repeated because everything was new. We had new trainings, we had to set up new lists, new marketing campaigns, new brochures, everything was new. Once you start to do the same thing 2 or 3 times, you got to outsource it. You got to give it to somebody else to do, because then you can describe the process and you can teach someone else to do it. Right? So that was a big lesson for me, is I got to learn how to get stuff off my chest. But you can't do that until you have a repeatable process. Make sense?
And do you still work 100 hours a week?
No, I'm down to about 50 hours at the moment. Right. So since June, July, August is quiet for us. This is why I'm here today. I've got a bit of time. But June, July, August is quieter for us. So I'm working about 50. It's basically I'm doing nothing except what has to be done, and it's fun. Right. So it's not work. Somebody said, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day for the rest of your life, and that's our experience, even though it's 100 hours a week. Question?
So can I just ask, what is there an exit strategy, or what's the long-term goal for?
Yes, there's an exit strategy. No, I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Is 50 hours a week forever until the end of time?
No, I mean, I plan to create more products and services and step back except for the areas that are most valuable, where I've got the most leverage, because everything I teach in our Transform People training, anybody can do once they know the process. So I don't have to be doing all the training. I don't have to be doing all the coaching. It's a process you can learn. So I want to bring our students in to become part of that organization, so I can step back and work with high-end value customers in the future until such time as I don't even have to be part of I don't even need to be part of the business. Yeah. Okay.
One more question here.
One more question? Yes.
How did you get from 26 schools down to 15 without losing a bunch of stuff?
Because half of them were stuff that I tried out that I'd forgotten about. Right, like scheduling apps. We had 3 scheduling apps. Why do you need 3 scheduling apps? Right? This one was cool, this one was cooler. It's the whole dev thing. As developers, we want to try the shiny, right? this shiny, shiny, this shiny, shiny. Actually, which one actually works? This one does. Get rid of the rest. In fact, the one we kept was a paid app. The other two did 90% what it could do, but they were free, and it didn't do what I actually needed, which is the integration with webhooks. Yeah. Okay? All good? Thank you very much.